Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Traveler. I'm Steve Glenn.
I'm Paul Glenn.
And Paul, 38 years ago, we started this thing called executive travel. Now we're in the saddle for our 38th year, and we're happy to bring to you every Tuesday we write a weekly travel alert. It goes to 100,000 subscribers, and that's via email at our website, executivetravel.com. Today, we've got some big things coming up.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple weeks.
Well, this last weekend has been a mess. We're going to report to you on the worldwide computer glitch that hit the travel industry. We're also going to cover what happens when the blank hits the fan and how executive travel goes into action. We're also going to share what's going on at United Airlines. They're changing their check-in requirements. And also, those silly hotels, they're going to do away with those small shampoo bottles. And we're going to talk more about that. And we're ready to go.
Let's do this.
All right. The first headline in this week's Weekly Traveler reads, "Warning, worldwide computer glitch may cause delays up to 1 week." Can you believe it?
It's been a painful handful of days for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I woke up, I was on the East Coast on Friday, so I woke up early and woke up to all kinds of notifications about systems being down, not just travel though. I mean, this was so broad and it tied back to a computer security technology, and it sounds like they did an upgrade of sorts that went totally sideways on them. So it's been a significant challenge, for many industries.
Well, on this week, we want to advise our customers. We sent out an advisory to our customers that if you don't have to travel during the week of the 22nd of July, maybe you ought to stay home, because we're seeing, if you think about it, Paul, during July, it's one of the busiest months of the year for travel. The planes are full, basically 90% to 100% full. So we had thousands of flights canceled over the weekend. That means they've got millions of people stranded.
Yeah.
And there aren't any seats for them to put into. So they may want to fly you from Atlanta to Omaha, but if they only had 5 open seats and they canceled, let's say, 2 days worth of flights with 2,000 people, how many days is it going to take them to get home? So a lot of people are canceling their flights or rescheduling their flights, and that's what we're telling people. The airlines are giving you the ability to change that or credit that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things you have to look at is what's going to be the best option. Should you delay this for a longer period from now, or do you try to get back on it as quickly as possible? I saw this morning, that Delta yesterday, they had canceled over 550 flights for Monday this week, and I think American was at about 50-some canceled with 150 delayed, and United was at about a dozen or 20 cancellations on Monday morning, with another 50 or so that were delayed. So that was early in the day. That just trickles down. So extremely painful. And to your point, it's the recovery process. The math just makes it difficult to get people reaccommodated when your planes are operating this full. So it's good news for the airlines, and then they get hit sideways with this thing. And recovery is not been quick and easy.
Well, it's been painful. So once again, if you've got people or travelers on the road this week and they can try to reschedule their meetings or do it later down the summer.
And I think that's one of the other things to point out is, your road warrior corporate traveler, they could probably figure out, and they will have dealt with something like this at some other time in their career. Summer travel is a lot of people that don't travel very often. So you've got bigger families, which makes it tougher to reaccommodate because they're on vacation. Summer's wrapping up here faster than we all want to recognize. And so, you got a lot of that. Those people, they don't have that experience. And so that causes for mass confusion and frustration and a lot of people that are put into a very bad position. And I know I was traveling with some guys, and one of their spouses was trying to get to Florida, and she got hung up in this on Friday, and she ended up, after 24 hours of being stuck in Atlanta, finally having somebody drive up from Florida to pick her up because there were no rental cars. There was nothing to get her there. So, I think at some point you just have to recognize, okay, I got to find plan C, D, or Z and go that route because of the length of time it's going to take to recover from this.
That leads us to our second headline in this week's Weekly Travel Alert. We also encourage you to look at our website, executivetravel.com. You can find a history of all of our weekly travel alerts there under our Executive Travel blog. The headline reads, "When the bleep, bleep, bleep hits the fan with the airlines, Executive Travel service shines." Paul, Executive Travel tries to answer our phone in 9 seconds or less.
15 seconds is the goal. 9 seconds is our average
Yeah.
on normal operations, and we watch that every day, all day. We've got a handful of managers that are watching that.
Now, this morning I looked, and when it was the heaviest time of this whole process, it was 42 seconds to answer the phone. Now it's down to 30 already and headed for single digits, we hope, later in the afternoon. But the whole point is, if you try calling an airline, it might be 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, why wouldn't you use a travel management company or a travel agency like Executive Travel? I mean, you're going to always have weather glitches. You're going to have computer glitches. You're going to have everything from terrorist action to wars to pandemics. I mean, it just seems like traveling has become so complicated. Why wouldn't you want a professional to help you save time and money and especially get you out of these messes? And these are just messes.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. It's our time to shine.
I mean, even standard operations. I had an example last week to where I had to postpone a trip for this week. And as such, the availability for pushing that trip back a couple days made it so the price of the ticket was going to go up almost 75% of what I had initially paid. So I was just not going to take the trip.
Right.
And so I sent that off to one of our agents, and she came back with that, this is what I'm showing. And then she said, but let me look at it one more time. And what were you thinking? And I was like, I don't want to pay more for this trip. And so she made a phone call and was able to get the airlines to adjust my flights and not give me that difference in fare. So I was able to push that trip back 2 days and not
And
have
that
that.
saved you, what, about $10,000?
It did, yeah, between the 3 tickets that I had going. So, yeah, it was very significant and wouldn't have been able to do it. And I had given up. I mean, quite frankly, I left here for the day. I had some other things going on that evening and went home and checked my email quick while I was sitting and chatting with a friend and saw the note from her that she had reached out and got an agent that was able to help and that we were all taken care of. And it was like, I was excited again. So, yeah, it's sometimes we can pull those things off. I can't promise those all the time, but, it's something that I wasn't going to put the time and energy into. They put the time and energy and were able to get that taken care of for me. So,
yeah, once again, there's some major advantages of using a travel agency or travel management company like Executive Travel. And we just find that our commitment is try to save you save you money, or make your travel easier as well. So
our people care. And I think that's the other thing is we can't always change it, the weather, things like that. There's not a whole lot that we don't have any control. We can help to try to find alternatives. But the nice thing is our people care. And Jenny knew that when I said, if I can't get it for this, then I'll probably just not go on the trip. She felt bad. And so she took that extra step and made a phone call and got lucky. A lot of that comes down to getting lucky with who picks up the phone at the airlines. Because if they're having a bad day, then they're not going to make you have a better day. But that's the airlines.
The third headline in this week's Weekly Traveler reads, "Procrastinators beware. United Airlines has quietly doubled the check-in time for travelers." Get this, Paul. United used to require a 30-minute domestic check-in time, which means you had to check in your luggage at least 30 minutes prior to your flight, or you couldn't get on the flight. Mm-hmm. And now they've quietly introduced new rules. It's 60 minutes. So they're basically saying you got to be checked in 60 minutes in advance for a domestic flight, or they retain the ability to not allow you on the flight.
And bags checked as well.
Bags checked
so I think that's the key, because in a market like my backyard, Lincoln, I could park in the parking garage, drop a bag 30 minutes prior, get through security, and walk straight on the airplane. If you're going to have people that if they don't realize this, they're going to continue that and not get that bag checked.
Yeah,
it
is for
in a small market. I think it'll be a challenge. If you're in a big market and traveling through that large market, you're used to this. You know, you're showing up an hour and a half to 2 hours no matter what.
And speaking of that, if you're going on international flights, United's taking their previous 60-minute requirement and moving it to 75 minutes. And as you said, usually if you're traveling internationally, we usually recommend at least 2 hours in advance, sometimes 3 hours, depending on the airport that you're going to and all the hassle factor and the time and the season, of course, affect all this. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is you better show up at least an hour and a half, probably 2 hours for international, so you don't have the hassle factor that you have to deal with.
And I've actually even gone beyond. I used to be 2 hours either direction, but now I'm 2 hours if I'm traveling from the U.S. internationally. I'm 3 hours now coming from international back home, because what our experience was a couple weeks ago was we got hung up due to traveling with a child. And so you've got a lot of extra things you have to show and prove, and you can't do anything automated. So we ended up standing in a line hundreds of people deep that had 2 agents to process these. And when you are traveling with that child under, I think, 14, 16 years of age, and especially if you're traveling with just one of the parents, you have to show all your legal paperwork that show that you can travel internationally. So that can really slow you down depending on circumstances. So
the fourth headline in this week's Weekly Traveler: hotels will no longer be able to provide small bottles of shampoo in New York City. Paul, I love those little shampoo bottles because I always bring them home and try to give them to somebody that's pretty needy. But they're going to go away. We've seen that over the last 3 or 4 years, that hotels have replaced those little bottles that are expensive with those
the bigger bottles?
They're actually with wall dispensers.
Yeah, the wall dispensers.
And so they have one for shampoo, one for soap, and they have one for lotion sometimes, or
I'm sure it's more cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you save a lot of money not doing those little plastic things. Environmentally, I understand they don't want these bottles everywhere. But some of the luxury hotels are pushing back a little bit because they know that wall dispenser doesn't quite give the same ambiance of a luxury shampoo or a luxury product that they want to have in their bathrooms.
Yeah, I actually was at a very nice property actually over this last weekend, and they actually still had the bars of soap. Which,
really?
And the guys I was traveling with, a lot of these guys travel more than I do, a lot more than I do.
It can't be. This summer, you have never been here.
Well, they're here at home less than I am. But, that's one of the things they said is, using body wash, it's a lot tougher to get, lathered up and feel like you're clean, where you get that bar of soap and you can get lathered up. So I think there's something to, especially we were in a remote place and we were doing stuff, getting dirty, and you want to feel like that you're clean after you take that shower.
The last headline on this week's Weekly Traveler reads: United adds a cool weather tool to the United app for travelers. Paul, they've added a generative AI weather app to their app, so that it lets you, if you're going from, let's say, Chicago to New York City, it will show you that thunderstorm rolling through Ohio.
Okay.
And it will show you that's probably why that New York to Chicago flight is late, and why your flight has been delayed. So it kind of is better communication, I say. And I would applaud United because they seem to, what I call, communicate often. If you're on their app and they're a frequent flyer member, they'll say, hey, your flight's been delayed because the pilots were late on getting there. They sometimes over communicate. They send you, I heard of somebody getting 20 messages once from United telling them something has been delayed, weather here, a pilot here, stocking a galley here. So, but I think this is one more step that let the traveler decide what information they don't want to get. but those of us that want to be in the know of, hey, why is this being delayed 2 hours? That's ridiculous. And the airlines are noted for not telling the whole story. They may not lie to you, but they surely don't tell you the whole story.
So this might be an effort at being able to rebuild some of that trust, because I think that's a lot of people don't trust what they're being told by the airlines. So if I can see there's a storm, then I'm not going to question it. But, I was flying home from a meeting in Boston a couple weeks ago, and everything was delayed, and it was because of restrictions due to weather on flights being able to arrive into Boston, into Boston.
Oh, okay.
And there was no weather. So, I was delayed a couple hours because of that, and I don't know where the weather was that was causing for this. So It is one of those where hopefully this would be something that would help me to understand that maybe are they telling me the truth or not, but it'd be nice if you felt like you could trust the airlines and what they are communicating versus what are they putting out there so that they can minimize their liabilities, because they do have liabilities now that if you are delayed for so long or whatever it may be, they got to provide some sort of compensation at some level. So this has to tie into all that somehow. We'll see how it ends up playing out.
Hey, we've had a great time today. Thank you for joining us on the Weekly Travel Alert. Paul's going to tell you how you zip, ding, doom, all the things to do on our show.
Please like, subscribe, share, and add any comments or feedback on topics that are of interest to you that we could cover in a future episode. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.